Welcome to the Geek Podcast, where we actually don't have any idea what we're doing yet, so bear with us.
I'm Beej.
He missed his cue, guys, and I'm Void. Today we're talking about, we're not actually going to do a long intro. Let's get right into our topic, because we like that when we listen to podcasts. Today we're going to talk about subjective value of games, which is something that we've been talking about a lot lately, just when we've been talking to each other. And it kind of came up because Firewatch and Superhot, really, to lay it all out for you, I bought both of these games within like a week of each other, 2 weeks of each other, something like that. And they're right around the same price point. They're about $20. And Firewatch is a game that totally blew me away. Like it was so good that I actually bought it for Beej and made him play it.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough for that again.
Oh,
that was one of the best afternoons I've spent in a very, very long time.
And that's the thing that's weird about it, is it's a one afternoon game, right? It was like $20 and it was 4 hours for my playtime. What were you at?
I was right at 5, I think, because I ended up going and leaving it running while I went and made lunch. I didn't even bother logging out. I went, had lunch, and came back. So Steam is showing about 6 hours, but I know there was time where I was just sitting there, where my character was just standing around doing absolutely nothing.
But it feels like it was worth it to me. Like, I don't regret any of the money I spent. I would have paid more for that game after playing it.
Every bit of it. You having done that, I keep trying to find something to repay you back for that, just to try to get you to play something that is that awesome to because you gave me that experience.
Well, we can't control game release dates, unfortunately. But I mean, so right after that, Superhot came out, and it's another game where it was about $20. It was an indie dev, and I liked the core concept of it. And it's solid. It's a first-person shooter. And basically, it's like always having bullet time. Time only moves when you move, which is a really interesting core mechanic. And it's fun. Like, the quality of it is fun. But I guess I sat down with the expectation that it would be a bigger game or a longer game or have more of a point. And when I finished it, it was like 2 hours. It was like a 2-hour session. And I just felt totally ripped off. And I told you about this earlier, but it's just kind of weird how subjective these things are. They're both games that I played in one sitting, and one I would gladly pay more for. And I bought another copy for you. And Superhot gave me the complete opposite feeling.
And I wonder if it was genre in anything with that too. I haven't played Superhot yet, but is there a lot of a narrative going on in it? That was the Firewatch was such a wonderfully story-based game that I was so invested in it that I loved it. But with Superhot being more mechanics-based rather than narrative-based, do you think that had anything to do with the value that you felt with it? That was there a story to go along with the gameplay?
There is, and I think that was probably the biggest letdown. I mean, you might be onto something there, because Firewatch, you're right. It was a really good narrative experience. Superhot has this, like, it's almost like a cyberpunk overlay to it. You have to go into, like, you boot up the game, but then it kicks you onto like another like 90s computer screen. Almost like an MS-DOS thing, where you have to like click through to different things, and you launch like Superhot is a game within the game. And and like in concept, it sounds interesting, but it totally missed the mark with me. I didn't like that part at all. I only liked the gameplay.
And I completely get that. For me, it's a story. Story is everything right now. I'm not a big first-person shooter fan. I'm waiting on Superhot to drop down into a Steam sale whenever the summer sale comes along, and I can probably pick it up for $7.99. I'll be all about playing through it for a couple of hours and really destroying an afternoon with it, but not for 20. But
right. Well, and there's like, it seems like everybody has their magic number these days, right? Especially with PC gaming and Steam sales. There are these games where, well, this is what I fall into. I have these huge AAA games that I know I'm going to buy on day one. And then I have all of these other games that I will buy when they are on sale. And I know that eventually they're going to be, if it's a $60 game, I know it'll get under $20. If it starts as like a $30 game, it'll get under $10.
Uh-huh. And that's exactly how I buy games too. I can't think of a AAA game right now that I'm even planning on buying at release. After I thought Final Fantasy 15 might be it, but after hearing the things about the demo through it from you and from a couple other people, it doesn't seem as wonderful. It doesn't feel like a $60 game to me right now. I'll pay the $20 when it comes out, when it gets into a greatest hits and I eventually get a PS4. But that's one of those that I'm looking at. And then you have games like Nintendo where, they never drop in price and they're just what they are.
Actually, I saw in the last week or so, Nintendo finally announced that they're going to do like I think it's called Nintendo Selects. It might be something different, but it's basically like specifically chosen games that they're finally dropping down from $60 to $20. So even they are coming around. I know, right? It's like they're finally coming around to the times.
I had no idea. I feel like I've been living under a rock since that was announced. I had no idea about that.
It's very recent news. We're at a weird spot in the industry where like $60 has such a different value to different people. Like,
yep.
And I think I've mentioned this to you before, but sometimes I will buy a $60 AAA game and know that I'm only going to spend 8 hours with it and be okay with that. Like, I was looking at Far Cry Primal, right? I almost bought that on launch day. And at this point, I'm probably going to wait a while. But if I had pulled the trigger, I knew that I was getting into a game that I would play for maybe 3 or 4 sittings and then never touch again. And sometimes I'm okay with that.
If I know what the franchise is, I'm good with that. If I know what the company is or the studio who's putting it out, if there's something that is a known quantity on that one, I'm okay with. BioShock Infinite, I was all about. I bought it on release. I think it was release weekend on Steam. I don't think it was release day. But I sat and I played through it, and I had planned on getting it as soon as I possibly could. And I was okay with it, no matter, even if it was as bad as BioShock 2's first 3 quarters were. I was okay with paying the $60 because it was a new BioShock game and it had the potential to be as awesome as the first one. But then you have some other games where I look at paying $60 for, say, Skyrim, when I'd never played an Elder Scrolls game, and I decided, nope, not going to do that one. There was just something about paying $60 for an unknown quantity that I couldn't bring myself to do.
That it happened with Skyrim, of all games.
Yep, it was Skyrim. Because I hated Morrowind. I remember Daggerfall and Morrowind ruined me for the Elder Scrolls, because I was such a JRPG fan. I was such a little Final Fantasy fanboy playing Secret of Mana and Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger that you put me in Daggerfall back in the day, and I was like, this is garbage. No one should play games like this. I hate this. Where is my anime hair? And where's all of this text to read? I want my giant windows with giant characters on them. No.
Where's your
turn-based battles? And I hated everything about it. Exactly, I hate it. I still don't like meleeing in Skyrim or any Elder Scrolls game. You give me magic every day. I still hate using a sword.
Okay. So now that you bought it, what did you buy it at? Like, what did you wait for it to fall down to in price?
I want to say it was around $10. Actually, I want to say that it was one of the Steam sales.
And what do you think? Like, what do you feel about it now?
Oh, I love it. Oh, it's fantastic. As soon as the actual next Elder Scrolls game comes out, I'm going to be all about it, paying $60 for it. Whenever it drops, I will be spending my $60 for hundreds and hundreds of hours in Tamriel.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder how much is that known quantity, right? Because like Assassin's Creed doesn't change that much year to year, but I buy it. Like it's just one of my games. Like it's one of the only yearly franchises that I pay money for, and I love it every year. Every year, it's basically the same game, but I have fun with it, and I'm okay with that.
I'm going to be doing the same thing with Disney Infinity at this point. Getting a gift of Disney Infinity 3.0 for my birthday. I was in such a Star Wars mood. My mom bought me the starter pack with Anakin and Ahsoka, and having never played one before, I wasn't going to invest that money in it myself. somebody gave me a gift, and I've spent far more money than my wife would be happy with me spending on action figures and other things. I mean, she has too. I mean, she has all the Incredibles ones for Disney Infinity 1 now as well. But we didn't want to spend any money on it before we knew what we were getting into. But the moment we knew that we even remotely liked it, we went all in. I am all about it. Heck, next week we get the Marvel Disney Infinity one, and I'm just giddy waiting to play with the new Captain America. It's gonna be Marvel awesome. Smash Brothers. It's gonna be fantastic.
Nice. Well, that's one of those things too, where I know you and I were talking that we've both been busy the last couple of years. Like, I had 2 kids and a full-time job and supporting my family, and I only have so much free time. And you did too, just because you've been busy professionally. And I dropped other hobbies in favor of keeping up with gaming because it's kind of my favorite hobby, right? So movies would fall off the list. Keeping up with TV shows fell off the list. You know, things like even just reading. I'm reading less and less when I had less free time, but I kept up with gaming because it's kind of like my number one hobby. And so I'm a lot more willing to drop $60 on a game than you are probably.
Right. And I'm probably way more likely to just go and spend the afternoon, you know, watching movies or something like that, going to the theater and having that experience just to see the brand new movie I've been waiting for and spend the $30 or $40 for the 2 hours I'm not going to get back.
Oh,
but I'll be like, yeah, that's...
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Because I paid like full price for a movie once in the last year, and it was to go see Star Wars on opening night.
Yeah, me too. That was exactly what happened. It felt weird paying full price. I don't do it often. The local theaters have what they call Twilight Matinee, where you get, I think it's $5.75 for a ticket if you get it between like 4 and 5:30. So it is like super matinee. So I spend most of my money there. We try to plan around that, but yeah, it's just you prioritize what your hobbies are and where you're wanting to spend it. And I do that with running shoes as well. I made a conscious choice not to buy expensive video games when I started to run, because I knew that every 3 or 4 months I was going to be needing a new $150 pair of running shoes, and that's what was important to me to spend my money on.
Right, it's so subjective because I run too. I mean, you know that, but yeah, I buy the cheapies. You know, I buy the $20 pairs of shoes and wear them out, and then buy another $20 pair, and it's fine for me. But like, I envy those other ones. I just look at them and I'm like, oh man, it'd be nice to run in that. I don't know what it feels like, but I'm sure it must be nice.
It feels like you're running on a cloud. They're the most magnificent, wonderful inventions that mankind has ever made. You put on an Asics Nimbus, and I promise you that that was my problem, was that being my first running shoe. I didn't start with cheapies. I went straight up to the highest tier. That was what ruined me on that one.
And it's kind of the way that, I mean, it's worth it to you. That's
absolutely
what we're talking about, is like subjectively for each person what it feels like to pay that amount of money for whatever the hobby is.
Yep. And for me, video games have fallen from when I was a kid to being the number one thing in my life, not even just my hobby, but my life as a teenager and a young adult, that now I love it and I do it, but it's the bargain hobby that I have. I bought a game for 59 cents on Steam this weekend just because I wanted to see what it was like for 59 cents. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, that it was not worth 59 cents, but it's okay. Subjective value. Somebody put a lot of time into that, but I did not think it was worth 50 cents.
But, you know,
I feel bad about that.
I do the same thing with TV and movies. You know, I wait for TV shows to hit the streaming service, and I'll watch an entire season in, 2 nights. Like, I'm already paying for Netflix and Hulu. Like, I don't need to keep up every week with shows. If it's really good, it'll get critically acclaimed. My friends will talk about it, and I'll get to it in a year maybe. And like right now, I'm watching through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think is on its 3rd season.
I think it just finished up the 3rd, or will be finishing up the 3rd.
Yeah, and I'm finally getting back around to it, and I'm partway through the 1st season, and I'm fine with that. Like, TV hasn't been front and center for me in a while, but I don't know.
Was it ever?
When I was a kid, but then I did video professionally for about 10 years, and watching TV felt like work, and it changed.
because that was one of the things you were talking about with the subjective value, is that Netflix has ruined the subjective value of TV for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I used to be the guy who would just buy DVD sets left and right. I had about 3,000 or 4,000 DVDs at one point on my shelves.
That's crazy.
And it was
Seriously?
worth all of it. Yeah, I loved them. I was really, really lucky. My family was really well off. We always joke around that we were new money. That we don't have it anymore. Don't get me wrong. That was before the 2008 collapse. But we loved movies. That was my thing. I would spend the money on it, and it was great. And DVD sets were my big thing. I bought Star Trek Voyager, The Next Generation, Babylon 5, The X-Files, things like that. When DVD sets, before they figured out that $20 was a good price, not $150. My Star Trek The Next Generations that I got from my dad, that I have now after he passed, I'm never getting rid of those because I paid $150 a set for those as they came out.
God. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's how expensive they were then. And now you look at it with Netflix, the subjective, yeah, you think it's crazy now. Just look at like, who would pay that? You crazy people. And I think that now, it's like, what were we thinking now that streaming is available? That subjective value at the time, it was a wonderful gift to get my dad. And now I would be out of my mind not to get him a Netflix subscription and get him Blu-rays or DVDs instead.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because you're right. It changes with the times. Like right now, there are so many like free to play games and cash shops and even, just even MMOs, which skew how you feel about a game's value, because if it's a subscription, you're paying every month. If it's a free-to-play game, maybe you've bought a premium subscription or you've dropped a bunch of money one time. Like, there's so many more options for games now that you look at $60 and you're like, where else could I spend that? Like, how many little cheap Steam indie games can I buy for $60? Or how many MMOs could I buy a few things in the cash shop and be happy playing those for, who knows how many hours?
Yep. And or how many months of a subscription will that get me? That's going to be 4 months of my WoW subscription. So am I going to be playing this Call of Duty, whatever they're on now, 4 million and zombies? Is that what? Is that going to get me 4 months out of that? Probably not. So MMOs really skewed me on that one.
Well, the other thing with the current structure of Steam is that so many of us have this gigantic backlog of games, and it's
God, yes.
I could buy a new game for $60, or I could just look at my Steam list and how many games do you have on your Steam list that you haven't touched yet? That you already paid for. Like, you don't have to pay any more money. You just sit down and double click a thing, but you haven't done it yet.
One of my friends for Christmas gave me the worst thing for my backlog. It was a 3D Realms, like 32 pack of anthology games of old, really cool platformers that I love. Wow. And I love 3D Realm games. But it's like 32 of them that all of a sudden, when I accepted this gift on Steam, like my library literally expanded before my eyes. And I was like, that's a lot of games that are on there now that I don't know if I'll ever be able to get through those, much less anything else that are up. It's crazy looking at it right now.
Well, it can feel overwhelming. And just like, even if you're super excited for the new game, if you have a ton of hype for it, just knowing that you're like adding to that backlog can give this like mental weight that you carry around with you. It's really weird.
It is really weird because I get the same way. I have that, you're right, the mental weight. That is the best way to put it. It's like, I should be doing this. I've committed to something. Now, why am I not doing this and finishing it?
Yeah, and I actually cleared my backlog this year, which was a huge accomplishment. But I had to come up with a system to figure out how to get through all of the games. Because I was looking at hundreds and hundreds of games in my Steam backlog, plus like piles of PS3 games I hadn't touched, and all of these digital games that I had on my phone and on my Vita and on my 3DS that I hadn't gotten to yet. Like,
oh my,
it was this huge mental weight, and I needed a way to get through it, and I did. And I think we might actually do a whole podcast about that later, because I've told you about my system and you seem intrigued by it.
Oh, and it's a lovely system. I'm complete to tease what it is before we get into the actual episode of it. Just being able to organize what you're doing and taking the choice out of it, because so much of it is just wasting time picking what you're doing.
Yep.
Because I'm doing that right now. This very second, I'm just looking through my Steam library as we're talking, thinking about what's going to happen when I get through, if I can get through playing with Stardew Valley. That I could play this, or I could play this, or I could install this. And I'm just like, I'm overwhelmed by it already, and I am not actually even going to play these games. I'm contemplating maybe playing these at some indefinite point in the future, and it's terrifying.
Yes, and we will talk about that. I really want to do an episode on that. But
yeah, absolutely.
You went flying right past something that I think is more relevant to this topic. Stardew Valley.
Yes.
I paid $15 for this game. I've played it for the last week and a half without playing anything else. This is the only thing I've been playing. $15.
Is it the
and
only
I've gotten
thing?
35 hours out of it, which is way more gaming time than I give stuff usually, especially in a week and a half. And you just started, right?
Yeah, I just started. I'm looking. I have 61 minutes played right now that I am still completely new to it.
So what are your initial impressions then? Because you're in a better spot to talk about the first feelings than I am. $15. How are you feeling about this game after about an hour?
Okay, let me preface this by saying that I actually got a refund on another game on Steam to buy Stardew Valley. That I told you I bought Portal Knights. And the idea of Portal Knights was great. But after playing it a couple of hours, the idea of Zelda meets Minecraft just was not there yet. It wasn't very fun. And I only paid $11 for it, I think, but I felt like I lost my $11 out of playing those two hours on it. And so I requested a refund from Steam, which I've only done one other time. And because usually I'm like, I spent the money, I'm going to play this game eventually. I knew I was not going to touch that game again. So I bought Stardew Valley, paid the extra like $3, or like you said, it was like $15. And it's worth every penny of it. I've played 1 hour of this, and I'm wandering around breaking rocks, and the music, it's just soothing. I'm like, I need to go tend my garden. I wonder if my plants if I have to water my plants when it's raining outside. Just things like that make me think about the game outside of the game, are what have made me want to keep going back to it.
And have you even tried fishing yet?
No, I haven't even tried.
Oh, man, watched the video. Relaxing.
I haven't even figured out how to fish yet. I haven't even found the beach or anything else yet. I got to meet some dude at the beach soon, and I have no idea how. I guess know how to refill my watering can.
We should say what the game is. We didn't even talk. It basically, if you've ever played a Harvest Moon, this is like Harvest Moon without all the sucky parts in it. I mean, that's the best way to say it. It's the first time that a Western developer has really taken the Harvest Moon genre or setting and run with it and made it their own. He stripped out all of these things that are just like grindy and annoying and get in your way, and left all the parts of Harvest Moon that people like. And if you haven't played Harvest Moon, it's a farming simulator, I guess, is the genre, but it doesn't do it justice. There are things to do. You explore, you forage, you can farm, you can do some fishing. I mean, now I'm talking about Stardew Valley. You can do all these things. You can interact with the townsfolk and like increase your social ranks with them if you're more into that. And you can find someone in the town that you want to marry and try to like make that happen if you can. You can participate in these town festivals, or you can, I mean, there's a mine in Stardew Valley that I don't know if you found it yet, but spoiler alert.
Oh.
There's a mine, and there's a whole adventuring game in there. You get new equipment, you get new items, you defeat monsters, you go lower and lower in this mine, and like every 5 levels is basically a checkpoint, but you can jump back to there the next time you come to the mine. So you're kind of working your way down through. It's basically a dungeon, you know?
Yeah.
And all of these games are in one game. So it's kind of like, what are you going to do with your day, you know? But it's soothing. And the whole game is so soothing.
It is smooth, and it's weird. And part of it is nostalgia for me, is because it looks like a Super Nintendo game. That there is, the pixel graphics, the 16-bit graphics that I just adore. But there's also just everything about it, the animation, everything. It's not rushed. If there's a run button, I haven't found it, where you're just wandering around and doing things. And that's what got me back into gaming in late December, was with Disney Infinity, on just doing things. These sandbox games, I just wanted to play a game that wasn't necessarily gamified. I didn't want to necessarily follow these rules. I just wanted to do stuff. I wanted to exist in this world for a while. Disney Infinity let me do that. Firewatch let me do that. Superhot would not let me do that. Stardew Valley is that. It's not even letting me do that. That is all it is. It's like, hey, be here. And I love it so far.
I'm glad you're liking it. I love it too. Obviously, I dumped like 30 hours into it this week. It's got a hold of me in a really good way. So the other thing, before we start to wrap up here, I when I was thinking about this subjective value of games, I realized that it kind of comes down to two different questions, right? Is a game good / fun? You know, is this game fun? Is it good? Like, that's one thing. But then the other question is the game worth the money it's asking for? Because even with Superhot, like, I was negative on it when I'm talking about it earlier, but it's a good game. It's fun. Like, I'm not denying that. It's just not what I was expecting for the money I paid. So the other question, is the game worth it, the money? No, not to me, not right now. But Superhot's a good game. Like, when that falls to $10, you guys should get it. Like, whoever's listening, you should get Superhot and try it out. It's one of, like, the most innovative first-person shooter mechanics I've seen in years. But I don't think that $20 for the package they're offering is worth it right now.
Which, if they had different game modes or anything like that, different patches, it seems almost like the way that you're describing it, it feels like an early access game that's not an early access game.
Yeah, kind of. Whereas, like, Stardew Valley, is the game good and fun? Well, based on the amount of people on my Steam list playing it every single night, yes. But then the other thing is the game worth the money? And it's like, oh my god, so much. I can't even believe how much they're offering for $15, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like it should be like a $30+ game, and it's not.
I'm absolutely amazed it didn't launch at least at $29.99.
Yeah, me too.
That with the way it is, and with the target audience that it has as well, just looking at it from a marketing standpoint, these are people who, if you're going to buy this, you're used to buying this kind of game for that price for your Nintendo consoles, that you'll pay $30 for it. You're going to pay that for a Harvest Moon game anyway, and then here's a game that is, in my opinion, way better than any of the Harvest Moons because I didn't like them. I'm in a different place in my life now than I was before when I was playing the Harvest Moons, but it for half the price of what I, had paid for Harvest Moons when I was younger. A third of the price, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing I want to ask you about, because I see it in our notes here, but we haven't actually talked about it. When we were talking about how $60 means different things to different people, you are a professor. You are Professor Beej. If people don't know that, he's actually a professor, which is pretty cool. But you were talking about the trade-in value of games at GameStop and what your students feel about that.
Yeah, one of the things that I've talked to, and this has been the case for years now, it's not just an isolated incident. Whenever I'm talking to the students, they're going out, doing the midnight releases, getting the brand new AAA games at GameStop that they've pre-ordered, and a lot of them are then, spending their time on it, but they never keep them. They play until the next new game comes in, and they're basically working on GameStop trade-in credit. That they pay a little bit of money, which is about what you and I end up paying for Steam games when we buy one. We buy Fallout, or not Fallout, but Firewatch, Stardew Valley, that kind of thing for $15 or $20. But I have students who are going out and trading in and have a big enough library of new games that are still on sale that they're not throwing very much money at the new games that they're playing on the AAA games. They're just going and trading in old games that they've already beaten and played that they ended up paying full price, like the first 3 or 4 of them, maybe 5. And then after that, they're working on $30 of trade-in value because the game has been out a month or so.
That's interesting, because I can't even imagine like getting rid of my game collection. I mean, I've moved to digital at this point, and that was a whole nother topic. We can talk about digital versus physical games later, but I'm all digital at this point, so it's not really an option for me. But even before that, when I was still buying physical games all the time, like when I had my 360 was my main console, when that was still the case.
Yep.
I still have a giant stack of 360 games. They're right over there. I know right where they are. Like, I can't imagine getting rid of my game collection unless I had another way to play them already, Like, and I'll do that sometimes. If I have a physical game and I played it on 360 and I see it on Steam for like $5 because it's an old game, I'll buy it on Steam and I might get rid of it. But I don't like the idea of getting rid of my games. They're like, it's a collection. you know?
5 years ago is when I started actually being able to get rid of games. I remember because I needed a laptop. I needed a new laptop to go back to school, and I had just an absolute ton of old games for the Super Nintendo, for the Nintendo 64, GameCube, all Dreamcast, all of this, the original Xbox, up in my attic. And I was never going to play them again. They hadn't been down since I moved back home from college. They'd been stuck in my attic, and I knew that there were games in there that I was never going to play again. I needed money, I needed a new computer, so I ended up raiding the attic and just selling so many of these games that I either could get digitally if I wanted to, like Final Fantasy VI. I was never, as much as I loved having a Final Fantasy III Super Nintendo cartridge, I was never going to pop it into my Super again.
And you have ways to get it now, right?
I have ways to get it now. Yeah, I have a copy of it on the GBA right now that my buddy gave me. I have it on my iPhone. I downloaded it when it came. I don't have it on there right now, but I have it on iTunes that I bought it. That if I ever want to play it again, I'm not going to play the old version of it, or I'll just never play the game again at all. I have like Shaq Fu for my Super Nintendo right now that I want to get rid of, and no one wants to buy Shaq Fu for the Super Nintendo. But I decided I needed to get rid of these unless they had sentimental value. If I wasn't ever going to play again, I was going to get rid of it. If I was going to play it again, nope, I could not. But like my dad had Star Fox. I have a Super Nintendo because my dad went to Sears and played Star Fox every single time we went to the mall, and eventually bought a Super Nintendo so that he could play Star Fox. There is no way in the world that I'm ever getting rid of that Super Nintendo or that copy of Star Fox, because there's sentimental value there. The same for the Killer Instinct black cartridge that my mom used to come in and fight me as Saberwolf when that came out when I was like in the 7th grade. I'm never getting rid of that cartridge. I know exactly where those are right this very second, but if it doesn't mean something like that to me, then at this point, moving around so much, just having so much clutter, and going to digital games, like you said, most of my collection is digital now as well. I'm trying to get to the point where I can get rid of more and more and more of my games, and actually recognizing sentimentality and sentimental,
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I mean, basically, those games are worth infinite money to you. Like, there's no way that you're going to sell them because of the sentiment. But there are other games that fall into the complete opposite category. It's like, is it even worth your time to try to sell them, or should you just throw them out,
Sell them in lots on eBay. That's what I found. If you sell them in lots on eBay, I just got through a round of that. Even if they're worth no money alone, a group of 11 GameCube games that you don't think anybody wants, I promise you people want them. I promise.
Yeah, it's a subjective value. They see the value in it. That's a nice way to wrap it up. So, okay, we're going to do Weekly Geekery, and we might have a better name for it, but that's what I have written down right now, so we're going with it. We want to give you guys recommendations every week. We consume media and culture and whatever. I play a lot of games. I do watch some TV and movies and read and audiobooks and other things. So does Beej. So every week we're going to try to give you a little bit of what did we do this week that we would actually recommend you check out. So for me, I'm going to actually pull from the episode today, Firewatch and Stardew Valley. Firewatch is an amazing game. It's probably the best narrative experience of a game that I've played in years. And it's about $20 on Steam. It's about a guy who, because of things that are going on in his life, decides to go out into the Colorado wilderness and spend a summer doing Firewatch duty. This is basically in the 80s, so there's no real communication outside of sitting in this Firewatch tower, except for your walkie-talkie that you use to communicate with your direct superior, who's in the next tower over. And that's kind of the structure of the game, and it tells this amazing narrative through you exploring the area immediately around your tower, and you talking with the one other person that you actually can talk to during the summer. I highly recommend Firewatch. It's amazing. Stardew Valley, you heard us talk about it already. You kind of know the premise. It's like a good Harvest Moon by a Western developer. It's amazing. If any of what we talked about in Stardew Valley appealed to you, I can't recommend enough spending the $15. It's really cheap on Steam. It's also an indie dev. One guy made it over the course of, I think, 3 or 4 years.
think it said 4. Yeah.
4, yeah. Which is crazy to me. So anyway, he deserves all the money and all the praise he's getting. Those are my 2 recommendations this week. How about you?
For me, it's not this week, but it is keeping me going like this. A couple of weeks ago, I found a documentary series on YouTube by 2-Player Productions called Double Fine Adventure. It was around 20 episodes of a documentary like that was put together like a season of television that was following from the inception to the production and through the production and release of Broken Age by Double Fine Studios. It is the most in-depth look behind the scenes of video game making I've ever seen. I mean, it goes in from, hiring the concept artists and what was going on at the company to as they launched a Kickstarter. I don't know if you guys know about Broken Age. I didn't actually before this, but it was one of the first multi-million-dollar Kickstarter games that had been around. And this documentary starts from the beginning of it, from when they hit the button on Kickstarter to when they released the final game, and all the ups and downs and game industry stuff that people like me never get to see. It was fantastic. I can't geek out on video games by watching one get made from start to finish. It was brilliant.
That's awesome. I gotta check that out.
Double Fine Adventure by 2-Player Productions.
Awesome. Okay. The other thing that we're gonna try out, I don't know if we have one this week, and I'm going to put you on the spot, but I see it on the rundown. I do a little bit of looking into what's healthy to try to get a little bit better at, being healthy. But Professor Beej over there actually has a whole website called Geek Fitness, and he suggested that we do like 1-minute health hacks. So if I put you on the spot, do you have one ready?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
All I want you guys to do is do a push-up. That's what I want you to do. When you have to go pee, do some push-ups. Do 1, do 2, whatever it is. You get up and you get a drink of water. Just get down on the floor and push yourself up once or twice. I promise that whatever it is, that's more than what you're going to be doing before. That kind of thing has really, really helped. For those of you who don't know, check out my blog, all of that, geekfitness.net, and you can see all of this. But I lost 155 pounds by doing things like this. There's a lot more to it than that. Don't think
we will have an episode, I'm sure, on that later.
Oh, I'm sure. That's great. I would love to. But what I want you guys to do is just do push-ups.
Nice. Health hack for the week. Okay. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback at... Ooh, do we have an email address yet?
At geek2geekcast@gmail.com.
That's what I was going to say, if I actually had it written down. Write us there, and listener email and feedback would be awesome. So, we've been Void and...
Beej.
Yeah, you know your own name. Good job. And
yep, I do. Hey.
With the Geek Podcast. So let's say, where can you guys find us? We didn't actually talk about ourselves that much up front. I'm Void. I write almost daily, usually 5 days a week at agreenmushroom.com. And if you want to reach out, if you want to talk, you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's in it. On Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time, so I'm super responsive on there.
And I'm on Twitter more than anything else as at Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. I stole the E's from his green. And I blog sporadically at geekfitness.net. But that's where I am pretty much all the time. I'm trying to be on Instagram. I'm learning it. But Professor Beej on Twitter is where I am.
Awesome. And hey, this is our first podcast, so I'm not going to ask for this very often, but as a very first episode, I've heard from other people the best way to get people to find it is if you guys out there listening right now for our first episode can subscribe, can write reviews on iTunes or whatever your podcast app of choice is, get us some ratings, get us some feedback in those official channels. That would totally help bump us up. I'm not going to ask for that very often, but on this first episode I am, because that would be a huge help and you guys would be amazing.
You are amazing, and you'd be even more amazing if you did that.
You are already amazing. I agree. So I think that's it. I think that's our first podcast. Good job. I'm patting you on the back virtually. I'm patting myself on the back.
High five. I'm high-fiving the air in your direction.
I made a sound effect. That was awesome.
You did. Good job.
We did our best. We promise. We'll see you next week. No,
thank you.
We won't see you. I guess we'll talk to you. We'll
talk to you next week.
We're new to this podcasting thing.